Thanks so much for being here. I'll hand it off to you guys.
All right, sounds good. Thank you. Great last session. So maybe before we start, what I can do is give a quick overview of who I am and my company, and then I'll pass it over to you, Erin, to tell us a little bit about your background and what you do at JustFab. So my name is Jesus Ramirez. I am the VP of Strategy at Tallwave. Tallwave is a customer experience design company. We partner with bold, purpose-driven brands and help them reach new audiences, develop new digital products and services, and ultimately improve their customer experience. And I'm here with Erin. And Erin is the director of CRM at JustFab, a textile fashion group brand. And I'm excited for this conversation. And thank you all for joining us. So I think maybe a good place to start, Erin, is if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you to where you are today.
Sure. So, as you guys all know, I'm Erin. So I've been in the CRM and email marketing space since the very start of my career back in 2007. I actually, my first job was at an email marketing agency. And I actually found my first job on Craigslist during college, and it has led me on this adventure. I would say that what has kind of led me to where I am now is a curiosity and also just a willingness to try something new. So, for example, in my first job at this agency, it's like I when I left, I went to something pretty similar, and then the way that I found myself into the e-commerce and retail space that I am now is actually online shopping. Um, on modcloth.com, saw a really cool lookbook featuring their employees, and I thought, wow, wouldn't it be great to work there? And I saw, like, at the time they had a position open for an email specialist, which was exactly what I did at the time. So I applied and I ended up working there, which really kind of, I would say, really started off like that next level of my career. And so to this day, I took a brief break, but to this day, I am still in the fashion industry and loving it. And so that experience was really like my first taste of being the real owner of the channel and being able to see the fruits of my labor and the impacts of the work that I had it's doing. And that's super important to me. And it's something that I've been able to keep throughout the rest of my career.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. It's a great story. And you have some good sort of stories in terms of how you landed in that position, and then also with JustFab, right? I'm curious. It'd be great for you to share, what attracted you to JustFab and how you started your role there.
Yeah. So I actually, before I even worked there, I was a customer of Fabletics, which is a part of the TechStyle fashion group of brands. And so before I had the job, I lived in San Francisco and I worked at a car insurance startup. One of my coworkers asked me, and when I decided to move to LA, she was like, where's the place that you would want to work? And then I was like, you know what? I think it would be great to work at Fabletics. So I kind of like put it out there in the universe. I didn't actually get there, but I'm very happy where I am. I'm in the same building. And it's the role at JustFab is very, suited for me. But the way that I got connected to this, actually working at the company is that on my farewell to San Francisco, hello LA Instagram post, I had a previous coworker at ModCloth comment on my photo saying, hey, I'm working at JustFab and we are in need of a CRM email marketing manager. Would you be interested? And then I was like, sure, why not? So I think, about a week later, I sent her my resume and somebody called me that same day. And then I was, in the next few days, I had interviewed, and I met everybody on the team, and I knew that I would be foolish not to take the job there.
That's amazing. There's nothing better than employees who are loyal customers before they become employees.
Oh yes, now I'm basically a member of all of the textile brands, so I have a lot of clothes and shoes.
That's awesome. So, what are you focused primarily in your role? So I know that you're director of CRM. What does that entail?
So, what CRM means at JustFab and TechStyle in general, it's what we're talking to is our segmentation and targeted communications to our customers. And so the channels that my team oversees is email is our biggest one. And then we have some merging channels like push notifications, SMS, and browser notifications as well.
Yeah. Okay.
And so, yeah.
That's perfect. And we'll circle back to that because I think there's some really interesting topics in that particular space. I'm curious, maybe a good place to start the conversation is around the diversity at JustFab, because I know that in our conversation that was one of the things that really stood out to you about the company, about the brand, and I'd love for you to maybe share a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so the first time I walked into the textile office building, I was, blown away at the diversity. I think it's possibly, factor of being located in LA, which is, one of the most diverse cities in the country. But it was just something really amazing that I didn't have as much in my previous roles. And so it was great. It's like I saw people who looked like me, who were my peers, and also like in some leadership roles. And that was extremely exciting. And it was something that I didn't realize that I needed in my workplace until I had it. And now I never really want to go back to anything different.
That's great. Um, yeah, that's a great story. I know that recently you JustFab went through a fairly major rebrand, and I'm curious if you could share with us what inspired that, and then two is if you could tell us a little bit about the role that the notion of amplifying diverse voices had in that rebrand.
Sure. And actually, I don't know if I would necessarily call it a rebrand, but we really just kind of like redefined and kind of like reset our intentions, like as a brand,
Yeah.
around like our look and feel and like who and our mission statement, and just really kind of like refine that and redefine that. So one of the there were a lot of things that we looked at, but one of the, our mission statement is to inspire women to walk through life with confidence and empower them to embrace their individual style, which I think has really, having us embrace that, I think has really been wonderful. And the things that we've been able to do as a brand have been really great. And I think have also just kind of like inspired like a lot of meetings. So we've been able to work with a lot of different types of women, amplify different voices through our partnership. So we started a program called Leading with Style, where we've partnered with, it's a monthly or bi-monthly campaign. It's kind of to bring our, our core values to life. So we are amplifying the voices of the women we admire so we can champion and support women. So we've partnered with Ali Webb, who's the founder of Dry Bar, Mandana Dangani, who's the co-founder of I Am a Voter. So we partnered with her around the election time. The poet Cleo Wade, and Ashley Madekwi, who's an actress and an activist. Like it's been really great to be able to highlight these women. We create, fashion collection around them, curated by them. And then we have like an interview series and additional content about them. But it's just been really great that we can stand behind that as a brand and really amplify these voices.
That's amazing. I'm curious, what's been the response to that from that particular campaign from your customer base?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a lot of positive responses like on our social media. Um, we have seen some pretty good engagement on our emails. I
Mhm.
think for us, it's just really uh, important that we are able to be more than just a place that you go and buy shoes.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's telling a larger story. There's a
Yes.
there's a there's a greater purpose behind it.
Yeah, and it's like we really are able to kind of like live our mission and our core values this way.
Yeah. How has this, and it's not a rebrand, but sort of a sharpening of your brand message and purpose, how has that changed the way that you approach your marketing efforts overall? Like, what has that given you the ability to do, or how has it changed your approach?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of it is, some of it is what I spoke about in like the people that we are able to partner with, and the types of women and like the work that they are doing in the world, um, and not just necessarily like, the celebrity for the sake of celebrity. So that's been really great. Um, and I think just in terms of what you will see on our our social media accounts and all of those things, we take the time to connect with our customers and to really kind of meet them where they're at. So we've been able to uh, promote like Black owned businesses during Black History Month, and really support that. We currently have a giveaway going out right now on social media for Nurses Week, for nurses, and we do a lot of like history of fashion kind of stories on our social media as well, to really kind of like amplify those voices as well.
Yeah, that's great. I'm curious, as you've pivoted or you've shifted your focus to address some of this larger purpose that you play in the world, and play with women, how do you measure the impact that is having? So how do you measure whether or not it's successful, however you might define success?
Mhm.
I'm curious sort of how you balance that with, really sort of driving performance and purchases.
Yeah, I
There's no
think
difference.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think that's still something that we are working through. Um, so, we have a lot of, specific, performance metrics, especially in my world of like goals that we need to meet. But I think for some of these efforts, it's like what we are gonna, what the engagement and like the interactions that we're gonna see, it's gonna be different.
Mhm.
And so I think we're still trying to figure out like what are the baselines for like specific types of email campaigns we want to do, and then how are, what in what areas can we focus to get more, and then what areas, how do we create that kind of balance between the kind of content that we're serving to our customers without sacrificing any performance at all.
Yeah, that makes sense. I know that so I actually wanted to get a little bit more specific in terms of your role, and with CRM, and I'm curious with the pandemic. I imagine that there's been this was discussed in the last session, was that there was an influx of traffic, or an influx of people moving to digital purchasing and e-commerce. And so I'm curious how that has affected your customer base. Has it changed? Has it gotten more diverse? Has it, have you attracted new types of customers that didn't exist before? Or I'm just curious sort of what's changed due to the pandemic.
Yeah, I think it's still kind of a work in progress, I would say. But during the pandemic, I mean, we did pretty well considering the fact that people weren't going out as much, and we are a shoe company. We had to make a lot of pivots, honestly, in terms of like talking about comfort and loungewear and those kind of things.
Yeah.
We had to make quite a few changes, especially at the beginning, to our marketing strategies. I think what's going to be interesting is now, as kind of restrictions are easing, people are getting vaccinated, the rates are lower, like what is going to happen, like what is the new customer behavior going to be like.
Yeah.
We even saw like just interesting trends. At the beginning of the pandemic, it's like we saw our email open rates go up, but our click-through rates were going down, because it's like I guess people were looking but not actually like ready to shop. It's like, I want to be distracted, but I'm not ready to go buy anything yet. um and so I'm curious to see, like, as the world changes again,
Yeah.
um what is going to happen, like what's going to be our new normal. I feel like we've gone through like 3 phases of a new normal
Yeah.
since last March. So I do think we're entering the next one.
Yeah, exactly. It's so interesting how that, it's funny, like the shift in buying behaviors. And I mean, I imagine, moccasins and slippers slippers
Yeah.
sales went up
Yeah. It's like
dramatically.
everybody wants those.
And now it's like, okay, like, are people going to be a little bit more sensible? Are people going to be a little bit more extravagant? Like, how are they approaching this next phase is really fascinating.
Yeah,
I think
from what I
there's a
remember,
lot of people.
I think from what I remember, we're starting to see an increase in search for heels. Like people are ready to
Hey,
ready to go.
that's so fascinating. And this is something that a lot of brands are dealing with, right? Everybody's trying to figure out what is behavior going to look like after this. I mean, if you go back and look at a lot of the predictions that people made even 9 months, 12 months ago about consumer behavior, it's interesting, because I was doing this recently, and it's actually much different than how it panned out. Like, people are,
Hmm.
it's hard to predict these things. And so, are there any things in particular, any data that you're looking at in particular, to make determinations of your campaigns, sort of what content to push, how to structure your email campaigns, all that?
Yeah, one thing that there's a couple things. One thing that just came to mind actually is when we're looking at reporting.
Mhm.
So a lot of times we are looking at year over year metrics and how things performing
Yeah.
year over year. And like, obviously the world is a different place. We're in a very different place as a business. And so a lot of times what I find myself is I always have to take one step deeper than
Mhm.
like, okay, we can look overall. It's like, okay, maybe it looks like our engagement is down year over year, but then it's like, okay, last year we, because the pandemic hit, we were really promotional. So we had a lot of those things going, and that drove a lot of, email engagement because our customers love promotions. But when you take out those things, so I had to just recently do this analysis for Q1. When you take out the promotions and all of those things, you could see that our engagement and our click to open rate is actually up 6% year over year, which is great. And it's like I would not have seen that
Mhm.
if I hadn't decided to take out these promotions that were they're, you know, from what we're running this year and what we're running last year, like extremely different.
Yeah.
So I had to get a little more granular, I would say, in that. And then looking forward, one of the things that I'm working on is our segmentation strategy for our customers. Um, so we've been seeing for the past few years, there's been a trend of like email is, it's still one of our biggest drivers to our business, but it's like the contribution is going down, and like the contribution is going up from other channels like SMS and push notifications. um, but what we really need to do is kind of rethink what we're doing in email to make sure that our communications to our customers are extremely relevant. And so our data analytics team has done a lot of work in helping us figure out, like, by tenure, by number of purchases, et cetera, how are customers shopping? What are the categories they're buying from? You know, what times are they shopping? Like how do we didn't have access to all of this information before. And so I've been kind of pouring through all of it and kind of working through and creating hypotheses about, it's like maybe this segment of customers is more likely to be interested in this. So why are we, serving them all of this other content instead? And it's like, what if we just served them what they, are most likely to buy? And it's like, in that case, is that going to be more successful? So that's like kind of a simplified version, but there's, multiple different, segments that we are, looking at and exploring. But that's going to be the focus of, our work for the next year or so.
Yeah, and you mentioned something that I find really interesting, and I've heard over and over, is just the type of data that you're taking in to make decisions. So, like you said, data from a year ago, or even looking year over year data is no longer as relevant. There's still some things that you can pull out of it, but in terms of consumer behavior, in terms of preferences, it's changing much faster than it ever has. And so, behavior a year ago isn't nearly as important as perhaps like, behavior a month ago. And I'm curious how you're thinking about that, how that's changing the weight that you're placing on different metrics.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of the things that, I've been looking at and investigating are things that have happened in the last year. And it's like, I know it's, last year was also crazy, but it also feels like the before times are all not irrelevant, but it's like it was, it was a different world. Um, and so a lot of my focus, I think, has been on the more recent data. What is the most recent customer behavior, which I think has actually been great because I've been at the company for almost 5 years now. And, it's really easy for me and, to get stuck in a cycle of, okay, what worked well a long time ago? It's like, let's try to bring that back. And it's like, we've tried this, it's like we tried it. Sometimes it works. And I feel like lately it doesn't work as well anymore.
Yeah.
So the focus is really on what are net new, completely different approaches that we can take, since, it's like the old ways may or may not be serving anymore. And it's like, how can we prove or disprove this hypothesis?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's taking more of a, it's taking more of a scientific approach to it, having hypothesis and then testing along the way. And it kind of gets me to the next question that I was going to ask, is how, like, practically, if you were to give practical advice to marketers, because I think there's, maybe just to set up really quickly for the question, is there's a balance you have to take between granular segmentation and continuing to drive personalization with just speed and testing and executing and iterating along the way. And so, like, how do you balance those two? Are there anything that you've instituted with your teams to drive speed and velocity in that process, and decision agility in your decision making?
Yeah, I mean, that's a real tough question, honestly. Like, it's still a struggle, I think. but I would say we kind of have streams, I suppose. So it's like there's our, our day-to-day optimization of like, okay, what are the types of subject lines that work? Or like, is this creative layout going to work? And like those things can still go on. Like those things will apply, like those creative kind of learnings. It's like those are going to apply no matter what overall strategy that we take. And then in terms of like the big pieces of, well, for our segment of customers who's only purchased one time, how do we get them to make that second purchase, and like looking at what they're buying, and it's like all of those things. It's like there are a few hypotheses within that whole segment, and then it's kind of breaking that down even further to like how can I prove or disprove that what I think is true. And those don't actually have to be, those tests, I think, don't have to be super gigantic at first either. You can start with small to kind of like, just kind of like test out the waters of like, is this, is this really what is going to work or resonate? And then as you learn more, you kind of build your case to do the bigger things.
I see.
Yeah. So it's kind of like it's tempting, I think, to try all of the really large things first. But also you're spending a lot of work on something, and it's like if it doesn't pan out, then you kind of put all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's interesting. It's taking a much leaner approach, but it does take a cultural shift to move to that approach, to say, okay, we're going to do these small campaigns, and we're going to do, it's almost like a test and learn type of approach to seeing what works, and then iterating and scaling from there.
Yeah, and I think that we've always been kind of had a test and learn culture. I think the difference in this approach is that there's focus areas on specific segments. Because I think in the past, what has happened is that we kind of were like all over the place and like, oh, let's try this, let's try this, let's try this. But like, what is the ultimate goal is what, it's like all of our, all of the things that we test should, tie back to these main segments and these hypotheses that we have.
Yeah.
Like what we've identified as the priority. It's really about like prioritization, I think.
Yeah, makes sense. So I think I'm gonna just do a quick time check here, because I think we're shifting over, I think, to Q&A, or maybe I have a little bit more time. So let me ask one more question, and then we'll shift over to the Q&A section. So one of the things that we talked about in our discussion was the role that that leadership plays in driving or helping an organization amplify the voice of diverse voices. And so I'm curious to hear from your perspective, because JustFab is so good and so has a culture of empowering employees to do this. What are some practical advice that you would give both marketers to advocate for this, and then as well as those in leadership positions to support their teams who are trying to do this?
Yeah, I think in terms of marketers and diversity, I think it's really kind of like understanding your audience and the audience that you want to go after. And so I say this is like, at JustFab, our demographics, it's like we have, 28% African American, 14% Latino. And it's kind of like is what we're putting out to the world speaking to these customers? Is it reflecting? Can they see themselves, in the marketing? And I think that's one thing that's really important. And also, putting, that kind of numbers behind it, I suppose. It's like, it's hard to argue with, it's kind of like, of course we should do this.
Yeah.
It's, once you see that, it's kind of like, okay, why not? And in terms of, supporting teams, um, I would say that it's really important. I think especially, there's a lot of things going on in the world. I think to really take the time to listen to your teams, and if they have, experiences outside of your own, and really try to, listen and understand. Um, and then create kind of like an open environment where like the environment that I try to create is that, it's like obviously I care about my team and their performance, like them as doers, but also as humans existing in the world. It's like work is not in a vacuum.
Yeah.
I feel a lot of times we have to kind of suck it up and deal with it, but I think, we're all humans here just trying to make it.
Yeah. And one thing that I know you had mentioned is this purpose of the brand externally, how it really manifests internally as well. And I think you had mentioned something around the culture of being able to stand up for what you believe in and stand up for what you think is right, and being really opinionated and sharing these things and being bold. And I think that probably plays a big part in it as well.
Yeah, it definitely does. I think, some of the core values at TechStyle are, we have drive, one team, and innovation. So it's kind of like we're empowered to challenge the status quo and, what we believe in. And anyone can, bring it to the table. It's not discouraged. It's a thing that's encouraged in the company. It's speaking up.
That's awesome. Makes a big difference, both
Yeah.
internally and externally. I think it
Yes,
reflects
definitely.
externally. Yeah. All right, so we're going to switch over to Q&A. So there's a couple of questions, and for anybody who's in the audience and has a question for Erin, please submit it at this time. So one of the questions is, this past year, we've seen incredible innovation across all industries. Tell us about new innovative ways your brand is connecting to consumers today.
Okay, cool. I'm trying to think. I think in my own space, um, what we are really trying to do is, like I mentioned, like really work on serving our customers like the most relevant content. Um, I think we've also done a really good job in terms of creating uh, this kind of content like outside of shopping, like I mentioned, for or leading the style, and kind of showcasing the voices of women and giving our customers something to interact with us with that's not necessarily just shoe shopping. And then we've done things that are pretty simple, but even like feedback for our merch and design teams. We've like asked things on social media or even in emails and things like that to get customers like involved in telling us and like what they like and what they don't like. And we used to, in the before times, and I'm sure, we'll do something similar in the after times. In the before times, we would have these events called Meet the VIP, where we would invite customers into our office and we would kind of like run a
Wow.
little focus groups. And it was really great because, anybody from the company could participate. So I was in there note taking or facilitating. And so it's really great, especially as an online company, to be able to meet your customers in real life and see who they are and
Yeah.
how they are. It was really eye-opening.
That's awesome. Any plans to bring that back?
I'm not 100% sure. I think it really depends on, what happens in terms of COVID and safety and all of those things.
Yeah,
But I would have to ask our market research team, but there's probably something in the works,
in the
digital.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Moving on to the next question. So, how are you balancing short-term goals with longer-term strategy initiatives?
Um, I think especially it's, in the e-commerce world, things are very fast paced. And, a lot of times, things change a lot, especially with COVID. It's like we'll have to switch up our short-term strategies all the time. But I think for the long-term strategies, it's just really important that you set your North Star of like, this is where I want to be, in the next year, or like the goal is to, let's say to like convert these, first time purchasers to second time purchasers. Like, what is like the overarching goal? And then make sure that your short-term things are still fitting into those categories. And a lot of times they still do. Um, and if they don't, I think also just questioning where it came from, what is, why is it important? And it's like, should there be another kind of North Star that is leading to? If not, then, what are we doing? It's like
Yeah.
being able to ask those kind of questions and just understanding what is the big picture. And it's like, based on that, it's like, do I need to adjust my big picture?
Yeah, so it's questioning both ways. It's questioning those smaller, short-term needs or initiatives, but then if there's a pattern there, then you have to start questioning your longer-term North Star, and
Mhm.
so that makes sense. One last question. I think we have time for one last one. What are you most hopeful or excited for in the coming year?
Um, well, I'm just really excited that, that you hopefully, we'll have uh more, what am I trying to say? It's like more life, like more things to do. That, we're gonna be opening up as a country. And I'm hoping that we, as I'm hopeful that in terms of our business that, people are ready again for fashion. I'm interested and excited to see like what the changes are in the things that people want.
Yeah.
And it's like, is everybody like, okay, I'm going out now, but I also feel that, you know, people love being comfortable, and like comfort is going to be a huge thing. Not just, for this year, but I think like going forward, it's like we're all used to being very comfortable in our home. So it's like, ooh, why would you ever really go back to uncomfortable fashion again? So I'm curious to see how that plays out, because I think um, the fashion world is going to be a little bit different than how we left it at the beginning of 2020.
Yeah, I feel like there's a new category emerging, right? It's like comfort professional, like comfort.
Oh yes, yes, definitely.
That's funny. I'm all for that.
Me too.
Me three. I was gonna say, I don't know if I can give up my leggings and sweatpants for jeans every single day. I'm like, ooh,
Yeah,
that seems
I'm
daunting.
working sweatpants into my regular wardrobe from
Definitely.
now and
Yes.
forever.
Glad we're on the same page. And I think we'll just see some more cute sweatpants keep emerging, and